We are live. Yes. Hello, everyone. This is Igor Kyrylyuk. I'm an articling student at Holthe Immigration Law, and I'm joined here by Igor Isaev. We share the same name, Igor Isaev, a Canadian certified translator. So today we're going to be talking about translations for immigration purposes to Canada. So this video will be helpful to pretty much everyone who has any documents issued in a language other than English or French. So, Igor, how are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. I'm in
Yeah.
Toronto. It's sunny, warm, very, very well. Thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's finally getting warm here in Canada, in Calgary especially, because this is an abnormally cold summer. I'll tell you that. We had so many rains. This weekend I went to the mountains and they had snow all the way up to chest. So not a very pleasant experience hiking through lots of snow, but hopefully we're gonna get some more sunshine in the next coming weeks.
Yeah, I
So
wish you shine.
yeah, Igor, we have many people tuning in from all different sources. Just to remind everyone, we're streaming to LinkedIn, to X, to YouTube. So please write in the comments where you tune in from. I see John, and let me just pull up John's comments. Sorry, it's a little too big. So John is writing from LinkedIn. Good day, gentlemen. Good morning, John. Everyone else, please let us know where you tune in from. And then if you have any questions, what are we going to do after we talk about the topic in general? We're going to have a short live Q&A session. If there are some questions that we feel like we need to pull in on the screen, we'll do that along the presentation. But in general, Igor, so today we wanted to talk more about translations, and I don't know any other person who would be more qualified than you to talk about
Thank you.
translations. I remember the first time I had to message Igor was when we translated the documents for my mother-in-law, and she was applying through a family reunification policy for Ukrainian nationals, and we had to translate some of her documents. And it was so hard to find a translator who would do the translations right, who would not miss a stamp, who would stamp the original document, the copy of the original document, who would write a proper affidavit, who would have a certification. So it's really important that you pay attention to how your translations are done, because it's so easy to make a mistake and get your application screwed forever. So Igor, I will probably pass on the floor to you. I understand we can move to the next slide, and I will.
Mariam, there's no sound. Can you?
Yes, I apologize. It looks like, yeah, now the sound should be fixed.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Igor. Okay, hello everyone again. So the agenda which I pulled together is quickly to speak who am I, why you should even listen to what I'm saying. Then different certifications of translations that I have come across during my experience working here in Canada. Then requirements which are presented by different authorities in Canada. First of all, the IRCC, the Immigration Ministry in Canada, and then several provinces, just as examples, Alberta, Ontario, Saskatchewan, one of the bigger ones and that I come across every day. And then Passport Canada for those who already passed the immigration, who are now on the journey to get their passports. And then some special cases that I have in my experience, some spellings issues, and we'll leave the end for any questions and answers that pop up in the chat or that you might have.
Yeah,
Let's go to the
perfect.
next slide. Tell a bit about myself.
Yeah, okay.
This is me. This is my website, isaev.ca, from my last name. So I am a translator, professional translator certified in Canada. I'm a member of all the different associations of translators here in Canada. I work primarily with Russian, Ukrainian, English, and French, those four languages in any direction, any combination. Let's go to the next slide.
Yeah. And Igor, maybe I can also ask you,
Sure.
while we are at this slide, you mentioned you work primarily with English, French, Russian, and Ukrainian. What about other languages? Do you provide services to people who have languages, let's say in Polish or, I don't know, Arab language?
Absolutely. I also run a translation agency under which umbrella we provide services for clients from all the countries, from all languages. We say that we translate from any language to any language. In reality, we came across around 250, 240 different languages that we have ever done translations in. Even the
Wow.
rare ones, no problem.
Okay. Perfect.
This is my personal certifications. So in Canada, there is CTTIC, the Council for Translators, which covers all provinces except Quebec. So CTTIC as an organization provides exams for translations, runs exams, and provides certification for translators in Canada. It comprises of 7 different associations. I'm a member in all of them: ATIO in Ontario, ATIA in Alberta, etc., etc. All the different names. Each province has its own association. Then OTIAC is a separate organization which runs only in Quebec. So one province of Canada, Quebec, they have their own association which works there. I'm also a member in Quebec. And I'm also a member in NAATI, which is an Australian association. So I also do some translations for people who are immigrating to Australia. They have their own association which provides certificates. This is
Wow.
just my portfolio.
And Igor, how long did it take you to get certified with all of these organizations?
Many years, Igor. Many years. I think 4 years, depending on the association. Requirements are very different. It's hard to get certified. You need to pass several exams, not just translation exams, but also provide references from previous experience, references from the clients, prove that you have this many words in each language combination, pass English exam, translation exam, several of them. Yeah, it's quite challenging.
Yeah. And so before coming to Canada, I understand you live in Canada for the past 10 years or something. Um,
6 and a
yeah. So before coming to Canada, did you work as a translator abroad as well? Or what
I
was your
used to
path?
be a freelance translator. Yeah, I worked as a freelancer for several Russian translation bureaus. Not super often. In Canada, it became more often just because there's so many more languages that
Mhm.
people speak here, and so many immigrants who require translation for their documents. It's a bit different in other countries like Russia, for example. But yes,
Right.
I have experience definitely.
Yeah. So we'll proceed to the next slide. And as we are here, I'm just going to pull a couple of comments from our clients. So
Sure.
Alex, where is Alex? I'm not sure where is Alex, but Alex says hi. Yana Krajewska says hi. Alexandra Ipatova says hi. And then our faithful follower, Spider-Man, says hello. John clarified that he's tuning in from Philippines and he's working here in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, planning to work in Canada. And can we give advice how to get to Canada? Probably not in this video because this video is reserved specifically for topics of translations. And then Norton says that I'm inland or Ireland. I'm not exactly what Norton wanted to say, but thanks for anchoring this. Is Mark well? Yes, he's well. He just is out of office today, and a very good topic for today, indeed. All right, Igor, will not distract you any longer, so you can proceed
No
with your
problem.
presentation.
No problem. So I'm also a commissioner for oaths. This is like the notary, but not specifically notary. in Canada, there are commissioners and notaries and lawyers, barristers, all different sort of things in the legal field. You would know better than me.
Yeah.
But I serve as a commissioner for all, so I can certify other people's affidavits and oaths. Let's go to the next slide. I'll mention about my translation agency here as well.
All right.
This is the translation agency that I founded. We are called Translation Agency of Canada, just because we are working throughout Canada, all the different provinces, all the different cities, all time zones. Anybody who needs translations from other languages that I don't myself know well, feel free to reach out to this website, and my team will be able to help.
Yeah. Igor, I cannot resist but pull up this comment from Polina Salnikova. And she says, "Hi, I know about Igor. I'm so glad to see a live stream with him. He's a really cool translator." Indeed.
Thank you so much, Polina.
Yeah, and says hello. And Norden just clarified that, yes, he's inland in Canada.
In Canada.
Perfect. Okay, we'll proceed to the next slide.
So speaking about different ways how translations can be certified. Translation is so simple, like you just take this text into different language, and that's pretty much that it is. But with the domain in which I specialize, translation of personal documents for immigration and such, the certification of translator is very important. So let's go to the next slide. I'll show how the translation that is made by a translator who is not certified in Canada looks like. I know it's a lot happening on this slide, but I'll guide you through slowly one by one. So on the left side, this is the translation itself. Hi, Bella. On the left, this is the translation itself. So the top part is not really interesting. It's just translation, birth certificate, this person's name, etc. The bottom part is interesting. That's where the meat is for today's discussion. So the translator, his name is Vladimir Yakovtsev over there. He's saying affidavit of the translator. He, as associate member of ATIO and a translator accredited by the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada, acting as a service provider for anti-translation services, he affirmed that translation is correct. So few problems here in this, few problems that I see with this translation here. First of all, this person is an associate member of ATIO. Associate is not certified. So associate is somebody who's in the process of becoming certified. This process can take many, many years, 5 years, 10 years. I know translators who've been associate, 10 years now, and they stopped attempts to become certified. But this word associate means that he's not yet certified. This translation would not be recognized as certified in Canada. He's saying affidavit of the translator. Affidavit, again, is a wrong word here because affidavit can only be signed by a notary or a commissioner for oaths. So a second person independent from whoever is making the statement. In this translator, Vladimir is himself signing, the only person signing. So it's not really an affidavit. There is no notary involved here. The last portion here is this accreditation by Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada. The problem here is that there are no translators who work for Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada. There are interpreters who work for Immigration and Refugee Board. Interpreters who are providing oral translation. When somebody is in the court testifying for a refugee claim or something like that, then there could be an interpreter who is interpreting the oral speech between English and the native language of that person to help assist the court discussion. Indeed, Immigration and Refugee Board provide accreditation for interpreters, which is oral, but not for translation, which is written. So this accreditation, which Vladimir mentions on this translation, is actually useless, doesn't mean anything. I've seen a lot of people mention that they are CILISAT, for example, accredited, or CELPIP accredited. Doesn't mean anything. It's not translation certification. It's a whole different industry. So this certification is not certified in Canada. A lot of nice words, but if you look attentively into them, don't mean anything.
Right. And so it's a good example of how easy it is to make a mistake, how easy it is for the average layperson to submit an application not knowing exactly what's the difference between the associate member of ITAO and a certified translator. Just very easy to get a refusal of your whole application just because of one missing translation that you think is good enough.
Yep. What I sometimes do for my clients, if they send me their translations made by other people, I don't really mind. All I can do is check if they correspond to the requirements of the accepting authority, because often they don't. And I just tell the client, like, no offense, but it doesn't correspond to the requirements. You can get a refusal, and then it's client decision if they, want to redo it or not. It's up to the client. In this particular case, this probably would not be sufficient for the immigration authorities, but somebody paid for this, so there are a lot of scams on this market.
Right. Yes. And Igor, I also wanted to ask you a little bit here. So it looks like Vladimir Yakovtsev also put a certification that this is a true copy certified on such and such date.
Yeah, unfortunately, translators are not authorized to certify true copies. In Canada, only public notaries can certify true copies. He's not a notary. There is no notary stamp. So again, this is a false statement that he makes that looks nice, but is useless when you look attentively into it. When somebody who has legal knowledge, some immigration officer looks into these documents, they could decline, they could accept, nobody knows. Most likely they're going to decline this particular translation because it's not made as it should be in Canada. So client can get into troubles.
Yeah. So just one translation, but at least 4 mistakes that we could find here.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy.
So many details.
Yeah. All right, let's proceed to the next slide. And so this is another translation, but this one is different.
This is done by certified translator, by me in this case. The key differences here to note that there is a mention of ATIO member number and the red stamp. So ATIO gives their certified translator, certified members, red stamp, which has ATIO word in it and the translator's number in it, and the name, last name, first name, language combination, the words certified translator, which go around the red stamp. So if somebody puts this stamp, if they are present in the directory of the ATIO on the website, it's a certified translator, and their translations will be accepted by immigration authorities. This is an example of how I usually do my translations. Just translation, then a copy of what I was working from, and then my statement. I don't call it affidavit, I call it statement because it's not really an affidavit. I put the word affidavit there in brackets, so some clients who are looking for this word, they can find it, but it's really a declaration or a statement, not affidavit.
Okay. And Igor, I'm not exactly sure if we're going to be talking about this later on, and there's a specific slide dedicated to it. But what I can see here is that the document that you were translating from is a scan of the what looks to be an original document. So
Yes.
it's really important to make a translation of the original document or from a certified true copy of the original document. Can we talk about this right now, or we should reserve it for the next slide?
Sure. It's very important because IRCC wants to make sure, immigration authorities want to make sure that you are not forging anything in the document, you're not photoshopping anything or removing anything. So they, of course, want to make sure that whatever you're submitting is actual, true documents, true copies, true translations. Everything is as true as possible. So yes, they want you to translate either from the original document or from a certified true copy made by a notary, in which case I translate that copy. Depends on the client. Whatever they send me, I'll work from that.
Okay. Perfect. So yeah, we can then proceed to the next slide, I think.
This is just the zoomed in version of what I write in my statement over there at the top. So I, Igor Isaev, certified translator, member in good standing. So I'm still in good standing with the Association of Translators, ATIO. Here's my member number, certificate number, and there is my red stamp. So it's becoming a certified translation.
Okay.
There are other ways how translations can be certified as well. For example, a translation can be certified by a commissioner for oaths. It is also accepted by IRCC, not accepted by other immigration authorities, but IRCC accepts. So in this case, translation was done by a professional translator. I don't see the name. Maybe it's hidden in the right. Doesn't matter. So translator signed, and then translator is making a statement. I, translator, this in this language. I am experienced in this language. Translation is full and complete. And then a commissioner for oaths, which is me in this case, certifies their signature. So there are two different signatures on the document. One of the translator, the second one of the commissioner for oaths. If there are two signatures, then it is an affidavit and it is legitimate for IRCC. Again, for commissioner of oaths or for notary publics, you need to look for the member number or certificate number, license number, something to identify who is this person. So you can go on the website, for example, of Law Society or Commissioner for Oath Society and check if they are actually there.
Okay.
I am an actual commissioner, so there is my number over there in the right corner, and you can Google and find my name on the official website.
Okay.
It's on the next slide, zoomed in a bit.
All right, let's take a look. Yes.
So here it says translation of birth certificate for whatever the name of the client. I certify translation from Russian to English is accurate and true. Declared under oath, this date, this city. Commissioner for Oaths is signing this document to become an affidavit.
Okay. All right, let's proceed to the next one. So similarly to the Commissioner of Oath, a notary public can do it, right?
Yeah, similar to commissioner, notary can do this as well. In this case, you'll normally see the word notary public in Canada. Nobody knows why they're called public, but there is no other word in notary public. And you'll see the usually embossed, sometimes golden, sometimes red stamp, which says notary public. Only notaries, actual notaries, can order this kind of stamp. So if you see that stamp, most likely they are active notary.
Yeah, and here what I can also add is that even articling student as myself, which I hope I will soon drop this this title and become fully pledged Canadian immigration lawyer on July 9th. Even articling students and immigration lawyers, they are notary publics by virtue of their status. So you don't have to look specifically just for a notary public in Google. If you find a Canadian immigration lawyer or any lawyer in Canada, they can do it as a notary public as well.
Do you have a stamp, Igor, which says notary public, or do you need to order it?
I actually do have. I don't want to search for the stamp during the live stream, but yes, we do get the embroidery stamp, and we do have a stamp that you actually ink and stamp on the paper. So yes, absolutely. And it also says notary public.
I see. Great.
Okay.
And then the next one is certification by a consulate. I've seen this a few times. In Canada, there are consulates of other countries, which you can also certify translation into their own language. So for example, from English to Russian, if it goes into Russia, can be certified by a Russian consulate. In this case, third secretary of the consulate general, whatever, and they are attesting to the correctness of translation. In this case, you pay the consulate to do that. On the next slide, I've seen sometimes translations that are certified by the educational institutions. So some universities, some colleges, some schools, not in Canada, but abroad, they do bilingual diplomas like this. So it's Russian and English at the same time. From my experience, the English translation is horrible in these diplomas. It's just doesn't sound good in English. But some people use this, and it's, depending on where it's going, it could be considered okay. So this is a certification by the educational institution.
And Igor, so looking at this diploma, the first there is a bell ringing in my head right now because I see a potential problem, which is the stamp. So the stamp on the English version of the diploma is just in Russian language. So does it normally cause any problems? What's your experience with it?
I translate everything that I can see on the original document, including all the stamps, all the hand markings, even if it's made by pencil on the edge of the document, all the stamps, anything that is there that I can see, I translate, because you never know what's written there. If you don't speak the language, what does this stamp say? Most likely it has the name of the institution, but you never know. And if it's something else, then it could mean that the document is forged. So you better get it translated. In this particular case, what if I see such a document, I recommend the client to get the Russian version translated as well, because
Okay.
nobody knows how the educational institution was doing these translations. Sometimes it doesn't match. Sometimes it's not 100% 100% the same. Some phrases are kept only in Russian and not translated to English. Some phrases are only in English and not translated to Russian. So there's usually a mismatch. So better to get it translated, including the stamps, of course.
Yeah, because I recall there is a explicit requirement saying that
Yes.
all text must be translated, including stamps. And they
Yes.
put including stamps specifically so that if your document is completely in English, but the stamp is, let's say, in Chinese, you would need to
Yes.
have that stamp translated.
Yeah, because if you don't speak Chinese, how do you know what's written on the stamp? Maybe it says
Invalid.
sample, invalid, cancelled, sample, whatever. You don't know. It's just some Chinese text. If you don't know Chinese, you don't know. Same thing with
Exactly.
Russian. Like, Spanish, Italian could be easier for somebody who knows English. You can at least sort of make sense and guess what it says. But other languages which you don't read, impossible to say.
Exactly. Okay. So, yeah.
There are some special cases. In Canada, there are a few organizations which are super particular in how they want their translation done. Um, for one example that I came across is Medical Council of Canada, MCC. People who want to become doctors in Canada, and they are submitting their documents for MCC. MCC accepts translations only done by these translation companies. And they put on their website these three logos, three websites, three translation companies that obviously won their bidding competition, not based in Canada, um, not located in Canada, but they want only translations done from them. So I always recommend clients to check the requirements from the authority to which they'll be submitting their documents to see what the requirements say. What does the authority want from you before you venture into paying somebody and doing the translations?
Right.
And the next slide is the same thing. One more organization in Canada, which I come across quite often, ICBC, which is the Insurance Corporation of British Columbia. It's called Insurance Corporation. I don't know why, but they deal with driver licenses.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get a driver license in British Columbia or register a car which you imported from other country to British Columbia, they have a list of translators which they authorized. That's the list. Nobody else can make any translations. Even whatever you're certified, whatever, if you're not on the list, they won't accept. So always research the requirements, or if you don't want to research, reach out to translators who have experience, like me, my team, and we'll be able to help.
Igor, I have two perfect questions from Isabella that I think we should tackle right now.
Go ahead,
Isabella
put the
is asking, would you recommend freelancer or translation agencies? Because some freelancers are registered on the ITIA website. And her second question is, or how to find a reliable translator in addition to their ITIA certificate. So Isabella, hands down, I can recommend that you reach out to Igor, and you may find his contact details at the bottom of the video in the description. And I will also add a little more information after the video. I think I've mentioned the promo code. Let me see in the description. Yep. So you can get a 10% discount if you use the promo code Holthe, and when you reach out to Igor. And I also have. Actually, I don't have the link to our website, Igor. But how can Isabella reach out to you?
So it's simple. Just insert my name, Isaev, Isaev, .ca. That's it. That's the website name. Or for the Translation Agency of Canada, the website is Translation Agency of Canada, one word, .ca.
Okay, perfect. So hope that answers your question, Isabella. And we'll proceed to the next slide. So what are the requirements from the IRCC?
Yep. I'll go over the requirements from IRCC. This is one of the biggest authorities to where people submit their translations. Immigration for Canada. Any immigration through Canada has to go through IRCC. Even if you're applying through provincial program, you will eventually end up going through the federal stage through IRCC. There is no way to obey them, to avoid them. All programs go through IRCC. Sponsorship, family immigration, refugees, everything goes through them. So the requirements from them, they accept translations. If your document is not in English or French, you have to get it translated into English or French. They speak both languages at the same level, so both languages are acceptable. What they want is translation. You can see on the screen here, this is a screenshot from their official website. You can Google yourself and find the same information. Translation has to be either stamped by a certified translator, and we'll go into this in a minute, or accompanied by an affidavit from the person who did the translation. I spoke briefly, but I'll go into even more details on the next slides. So either certified translator stamped or affidavit from the person who done the translation. Let's go to the next slide. I'll go into more details on what is the translation. How do you know if the translator is certified? So what IRCC tells us, a certified translator is a member in good standing of a professional translation association in Canada or abroad. So in Canada, there are only 8 associations of translators. I'm a member of all of them, so I know for sure. 7 under CTTIC in each province, 1 in Quebec. 8 associations. If your translator is a member of one of these associations, if they are certified, if they have the word certified, and they have the stamp, which shows their name or certificate number, that's good enough. What is not good enough, you can see in the gray box there on the slide, a translator in the process of receiving their certification is not considered as a certified. That's exactly the example we were talking on the previous slide of Vladimir, who is not certified, who is an associate member. It's not certified. Do not order. Be careful ordering from them because it might not satisfy the requirements of IRCC.
Yeah. Igor, in my practice, I often have clients who live in post-Soviet countries. And the problem that they have is that some countries don't require translators to have a seal or stamp. Or the translator is not even allowed to have a seal or stamp. So when they do the translations, the translator writes an affidavit at the bottom saying, I'm such and such, registered with such and such organization, my organization number is such and such, and I translated this document from, let's say, Russian to English, or from Ukrainian to English. And there's no stamp. Will this translation be accepted by IRCC?
It will not be certified translation because it doesn't have the stamp, and they want particularly a seal or a stamp. In other countries like Russia, Ukraine, there is no certification for translation. There is no certificate for translation. There is no certified translation. Translator can be professional, experienced, but there's no certificate. I have actual certificate here in Canada. That's why I'm called certified. But other countries don't have this word, don't have this terminology. So it will not be certified translation. if there is notarization on this translation, if notary signed, the translator came to his office, declared this, and the notary signed, so there are two signatures, one of the translator, one of the notary, and notary stamps, that will be accepted under the second paragraph of the requirements, accompanied by an affidavit from the person who did the translation.
Okay.
IRCC doesn't really like this option, but sometimes people don't have certified translators available, some rare languages or somebody outside of Canada. So IRCC left this room for people to use affidavits in case there is no certified translator.
Okay. So this brings me to another question, a really practical one. So let's say there is no stamp. So if there is no stamp, option A, we forget about it, right? We go to the notary public, who puts an affidavit saying, yes, this translation is done by a proper translator. I verify that this is the person authorized to do the translation is accurate, etc. And the notary public writes the jurat, which is basically just affirming that this is a proper translation, so notarization of the translation. The notary public would write it in the, let's say, in Ukrainian or Russian language. So it leaves us with it brings us back to square one. So there is a new text that is in language other than English or French. So then the translator has to translate the jurat again, and then the notary public has to notarize the newly translated jurat, and so it creates this never-ending loop. So how do you deal with that?
That's a big problem because you're absolutely correct. It never ends. The notary's stamp, for example, in Russia is only in Russian, or notary's stamp in Chinese is only in Chinese. So you would have to translate and then notarize, again translate. It just doesn't end. So every client decides what they want. If it's done in Canada, we don't have this issue. Everything is in English or French, so we avoid that issue. If it's done outside of Canada, every client decides what they want. I translate everything that I see. If they send this document to me, I will translate everything that is not English or French. Some clients submit with the Ukrainian jurat and Russian notary stamp or Ukrainian notary stamp, and hope that it will be acceptable.
Yeah, and so it's really important. So what I see in my practice is many clients decide to do the translations of their documents in their country of origin because it's so much cheaper, right? So here in Canada, you would probably be looking at about $30 per page or something. So if you translate a document in Ukraine, that probably would be about maybe $5, maybe less, maybe more. But it's way cheaper than doing the translation in Canada. But essentially, as an immigrant myself, I can tell you that you're immigrating just once, and you go through this process just once in your life. And if you have just one shot, and you risk your whole application just to save you a couple of $100s, you have to really weigh in the risk factors and really decide for yourself whether you are willing to take a risk or you're willing to play by the book, play it safe, maybe spend a little more money on your application, but then sleep easy at night.
I agree with you. I offer the same advice to my clients. You only prepare these documents once, rarely twice. If some people are moving to Israel and then from Israel to Canada, some people have two migrations, but normally it's just once. So yeah, don't cut, $5-10 here and there and try to save those $5, risking your application. What's the worst that can happen? Your application will get declined. Whatever the reason, the officer might not like the translation or whatever the authorization, they'll decline your whole application. And then how do you resubmit? Sometimes you need to wait a lot of, many years so that the slot opens up again and then you have the opportunity to apply again. Too much headache. And you just save, 5, 10, 50, even $50. is not worth the risk, is not worth your time.
Yeah.
Maybe pay a bit more, do it properly certified, and then apply and sleep well at night. You're right.
And Igor, we've seen so many clients that received their ITA, submitted their application, waited for 5 or 6 or 7 months, and then got their application returned for being incomplete or refused because of a missing translation, or the translation is not good enough. And then they get back into the pool of candidates in express entry, and with this impressive spike in the CRS points, they have no other chance. So they lost their chance of immigrating to Canada forever. So the stakes are really high, and it's up to you and your risk tolerance as to how you want to proceed. Sometimes it's just safer to maybe reach out to a translator who knows how to do it right and who does it daily, rather than entrusting your life and the life of your kids and your grandkids and every other generation after you to the translator who might be just cutting you $5 or $10.
Yes, you're absolutely right. The prices for translations in other countries, especially post-Soviet countries, is much cheaper than in Canada. But there's a reason, right? The work, the labor in Canada costs much more. The level of living in Canada costs much more. That's why people want to immigrate here and live here. So when you move here, do it right. Yeah, absolutely agree with your point. Don't take unnecessary risks. Do translations correctly, prepare your applications correctly, and then sleep well and be happy in the new country.
Right. Okay. We'll proceed on to the next slide. So this time it's IRCC and ITAO translation requirements, right? So how do you choose a translator?
This is screenshot how to make sure that your translator is certified in Canada. ATIO is one of the 8 associations in Canada. So if you go to their directory, search, you input whatever language from this language to this language. There is a pop-down list which shows you candidate, and then certified, and then maybe retired or whatever the other options. So pick certified. Do not pick candidate. Just to make sure that you are selecting the right translators for the job.
Okay.
And this is again all the different associations that are available in Canada from which you can pick your certified translators. 7 members of CTTIC, 1 OTIAC in Quebec, and in the bottom right corner, just a highlight. Do not pick associates, do not pick candidates, because they will not be acceptable for IRCC purposes. Pick certified. There's also this word affiliate. Affiliate means somebody who joined from one organization to another. Let's say I'm living in Ontario, so my home organization is ATIO in Ontario, but I want to become a member of a different association. I will be affiliate in that organization. Affiliate is okay. Affiliate just means that you don't live in this province, you registered from other province, but you're still certified. So affiliate is okay, associate is not okay. A lot of nuances in these words. So if anybody who watches this stream, if you're not sure, reach out, email or anything. I will help provide you the best solution.
Okay, perfect.
So now about affidavits. So the second route for IRCC was to get your translations not accompanied by an affidavit. So what is an affidavit and who can sign this? What IRCC says, affidavit is a document that states that the translation is accurate version of the original text. So it's as simple as writing, this is an accurate translation of the source document. Whoever signs the affidavit, the translator himself or herself, need to do it in front of the authorized person. Authorized people in Canada are Notary Public, obviously, Commissioner for Oaths, Commissioner for taking affidavits. These are different words for the people who can take oaths. So somebody can come to my office, say, I swear that this is true. They'll sign, I will sign, This is a valid affidavit for IRCC purposes. Outside Canada, Notary Public, or any equivalent, I've never seen any other names, words that signify Notary Public, but this is usually how it works like this. So IRCC also mentions that you cannot take affidavit yourself or for your members of your family, so your wife, husband, kids, grandkids. It's not good because there'll be a conflict of interest, and also your immigration lawyer, whoever is preparing your immigration package, should not be the same notary who is signing the notarization or translation, the affidavit.
And Igor, it brings us back to this topic that we've already discussed about affidavits done by notary publics abroad. If they have a seal or stamp that is not in English and they write their jurat in language other than English or French, it creates this never-ending loop of translating the jurat and then putting jurat on the new translation and so on and so on. So you have to be really mindful of that. Okay.
I agree with you. This is just examples of how the translations look like when they are certified by a notary on the left, commissioner for oaths on the right. These are all acceptable for IRCC. Need to look into details to find those correct words there. Okay. And on the next slide, again, just the words that are acceptable: notary public, notary, in French, notaire. Same thing for commissioner. Sometimes they're called commissioner for oaths, sometimes commissioner of oaths. I don't know the difference, just different provinces have different names. Same thing, commissioner for affidavits, or in French, commissaire à l'affirmation. Same thing, commissioner for swearing, commissioner for oaths. There has been a lot of discussion about apostilles in Canada. When Canada joined the Hague Convention on Apostilles this January 2024, a lot of people started asking, do we need to get our documents apostilled if we are bringing them from other countries into Canada? As of today, as of June, whatever it is, 25th, 2024, there is no requirement from IRCC to get the documents apostilled. You don't need to get them apostilled, just take them, translate them, that's good enough. So Canada trusts that you will not be forging your documents in this regard. So apostilles, as of now, for documents submitted to IRCC are not required. This could change. You need to keep an eye on what's happening within IRCC. There are discussions, but as of now, it's not required.
Okay, and Igor, practical question here. So if, let's say, someone comes to you with a document that was apostilled, how do you translate that document? Do you translate the apostille? For example, I can see that there is some text in Russian language in here. Would you amend this as a separate piece of, a separate page to your translation? How would you deal with documents like that?
I would absolutely get it translated, just because it is part of the original document and it has text which is not in English or French. In this case, Russian, and the stamp is Russian. So I would definitely get this translated. How I would count this depends on how many pages. If it's like one page with the apostille, I would count everything together as one page. There's not much here, like 50 words maybe. It's not much. If you just give me apostille, just this screenshot, I would probably count as one page again, because just, there is work to create a file, put everything in, save it, email it, minimum order, so to say.
Exactly. And so what would be the right approach for the applicant if, let's say, the applicant has a document issued all in English, and then he has an apostille in, let's say, Ukrainian language. So the whole document is fine, but just because a couple of years ago they went and did an apostille, would they need this apostille to get translated to be accepted? Or they can just, I don't know, rip it off, or maybe just hide it, or maybe just avoid translating it?
It's hard to rip it off because it's binded to original document. You can see the holes and the stitches or whatever that red thing, ribbon is. It's hard to rip it off, so you will not be able to hide it. I would advise the client to get it translated. Scan everything, all the pages back and front. If it's like a book opens up, all the pages, scan them properly, send them over by email or something, and get it translated, and then submit that as the final package. You don't want to risk again that this small piece. The immigration officer might have questions. What is this? Why this is not translated? What does it say? You don't want to risk this refusal.
Right. Okay. We do have a question from Isabella again. So how does a translated stamp look like? Just the text, or also in a stamp format? So maybe we can go back to couple of slides and show your stamp, the one that you use.
No, she's asking the actual stamp on the document. How is it translated? I usually put like it looks like text, but I put brackets around it so people understand that this is a stamp. So on this document, for example, you can see the stamp in the middle, the diagonal stamp something. So it's somewhere in the text.
Yeah, it's right in here.
Yeah, here, stamp. That's it.
Okay. All right, let's return back. Sorry, I had to skip a couple of slides. Okay, so
there are more questions from Isabella. We'll get to them.
Yeah, exactly. And for those 231 people who watch us live, please make sure you leave your comments. If you have any questions, just let us know. We will have a Q&A session at the end. But then if there is some questions that we can pull in organically into our discussion, we will do that as well. So highly encourage you to be active. And then if you don't have any questions, just let us know where you tune in from so that we can understand what's the geography is today. And we'll give you a shout out later on. So now we get to a stage where we will discuss the requirements from Alberta, which is interesting because there's so many immigrants coming to Alberta. Many of them would come here for our provincial nominee program, Alberta Opportunity Stream, which was extremely popular to a point that Alberta had to suspend the program and resumed the intake just for 7 days until the end of the year. And we had seen just a debacle and a disaster happening on June 11. So regardless, there are still many people who still want to immigrate to Alberta, despite all of these challenges, and they also need translations. So Igor, do you have many clients from Alberta?
Quite many. And Alberta is one of the provinces which usually is like nothing, and then everybody in the last day. Okay, we need this super urgent today, tomorrow, like 10 pages, 5 pages, today. Like everything is last moment. And then again, nothing for, 3 more months or half a year. Alberta is like this.
Okay. So do they have any specific requirements for the translations?
This is everything that is available on the Alberta website. This is a screenshot from the Alberta website. What it says, provide a certified translation with any documents that are not in English or French. Upload them together with copies. Very simple. So again, it's English or French. Both languages are officially accepted. Anything that is not English or French has to be translated. It just says certified translation with no explanation. The last sentence there says, visit the ATIA website to find a certified translator. So Alberta obviously promotes their own certification authority, ATIA, and they give it as a website for people to look at and find translators. The problem with the ATIA is that it's a very small, like the province, quite small, but also the translation association is quite small. There is not so many people who are certified translator in ATIA. For many languages, there's just nobody in ATIA. There's no certified translator. So reading this document, when I say visit the ATIA website, it is not a particular requirement that you only have to use ATIA. You can use, at least how I understand it, how I have always done to my clients, you can use other associations as well. ATIO in Ontario, or TIAC in Quebec, other associations in different provinces which have more people, more translators available in those languages, you can use them. So I put there as a question. My answer is yes. Other certified associations are also allowed.
Okay. And then Ontario is a little more strict as to their
Ontario
requirements.
is much more strict. Yes, Ontario again promotes the Ontario Association (ATIO). So what they say on their website, I'll read it slowly. So this is again screenshot from the official website, ONP. Anybody can Google. If you're applying for the Ontario program within Ontario, so if you're already in Canada, in Ontario, and you're applying for this immigration program, you have to use translator who is a member of ATIO, like myself. If you cannot find ATIO professional, let's say for Kazakh language, there is just nobody. Uzbek language, there is just no certified translators. Rare languages like this, then you can use any other translator, get it notarized, and then provide a statement, provide a letter explaining how you were looking and that you couldn't find, explaining why you couldn't find somebody in ATIO. So for those rare languages, we find somebody who is not member of ATIO, professional translator, obviously, get it notarized with an affidavit, and then write this letter for the client explaining what the issues were finding the ATIO professional. This is a rare language, or maybe translators were not available. Maybe there's two people and they're both on vacation. Depending on language, things like this can happen. Especially the problem comes with Ukrainian and Romanian. Ukrainian, there is like 3 people who are ATIO certified translators. It's very hard to get hold of, super busy, sometimes on vacations, so you cannot just, they just don't respond to you. Same thing with Romanian. I think there's 1 or 2 certified translators, always busy and never responding.
So it's a good startup idea for those people who are looking for their passion and what they want to do in life. If you are Ukrainian national and you live in Ontario, or if you're Romanian,
Go
consider
ahead.
maybe working
Absolutely.
towards requirements.
Absolutely consider. It takes few years, but it's definitely possible, definitely doable if you're highly qualified and skilled in language. A person who likes languages, likes translations, definitely go for it. We need more qualified people.
Yeah.
So,
Now, what if you apply from outside of Canada?
so
This is
outside of Canada,
different.
you can get it notarized. You can get any translator, obviously professional who speaks and knows both languages, and get it notarized. If the immigration authorities find the translation bad quality, whatever they want, they can always say that it has to be redone. Even IRCC sometimes asks translations who are done by in other countries than Canada. They ask to get it redone in Canada so they can trust these translations more.
Right.
Um,
And Igor, we had a client who booked a consult with us recently. They had their application to ONP refused just for one tiny little mistake.
which one?
So it was just the ONP human capital stream application, just one tiny minor mistake, and no second chance, no chance for correcting the application. So typically, have you actually dealt with someone who had a faulty translation and who got a second chance? Let's say the ONP reached out and requested a new translation, or did you have any clients who had refusal right away as soon as the ONP realizes, oh, we don't like this translation?
I never had refusals in my practice, but I had clients who received letters from ONP or IRCC, and they usually letters like, okay, your translations were not good enough. We need new translation within 5 days. Submit them by email. This is the email, done. So they give super short timelines, like 1 week at most. And then obviously the clients come super urgent. We need this like tomorrow to submit. Please help. So I've seen screenshots from emails that people received from IRCC and ONP asking to get the new translations done within super short time frames, we help. That's why what we are here for. But it's quite stressful. So better do it right the first time.
Yeah, especially when you have to arrange the translation from a rare language, where you have to find someone who's not certified and then notarize the translation.
Also depends on the volume. If it's a big family, let's say 2 adults and 3 kids, there's a lot of documents involved: birth certificates, marriage certificates, divorce certificates. All those things add up.
Yeah. All right. So now we turn into another prairie province, Saskatchewan.
Yep. Saskatchewan seems very easy on the first site. Again, screenshot from the official website. So all it says is translations has to be certified by a regulatory body. Same thing with our IRCC. So Saskatchewan just copies from IRCC, actually makes the link to the IRCC website saying do the same thing, nothing else. You obviously cannot do it by a family member, your spouse, anything who prepares your application, like your immigration consultant or your lawyer, just to avoid the conflict of interest. But requirements are very simple, the same as IRCC, except one more detail, which is not on this screenshot, but on the next slide. There's a small detail which nobody reads. You need to provide translated documents with the original documents. Your translator must fill out this form to attach. And there's a small link. So the link is to translator's affidavit. So what they are saying that no matter who prepares your application, even if they are certified in Canada, whatever the person, they have to sign this affidavit.
Mm-hmm.
It's a long document saying that I, this person, have this knowledge of this language. I learned the language from this source in the school or whatever courses that you have. How do you know language? I made this translation. So a long document. The most important point is on the bottom, which says Notary Public.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to be done properly notarized with Notary Public, and then only you can submit. So when people reach out for translations for Saskatchewan, I have to go to Notary. Even though I'm a certified translator in Canada with all the stamps and everything, I still have to go to Notary to sign this affidavit. Otherwise, it will not be a full package that is required by the provincial authorities.
Yeah. And Igor, just coming back to this screenshot. So they have the requirements for the translations, and then this paragraph, let me guess, it's hidden somewhere at the bottom. So at the place where you would typically not look at it at all, right?
It's over there at the bottom. That's why it's super hard to find for somebody who is not doing this every day. So better reach out to professionals, professional agencies. I want to say like me, but in reality, like me, people who are doing this every day, who know all the requirements, who have researched this, Googled this, who had experience with other clients applying for Saskatchewan or whatever province you're applying. Definitely reach out. It doesn't cost anything for asking. I'm not charging per hour or per minute answering all the email questions. It's free, so better ask. If you want to get translations done, obviously, then it's paid, but all the questions are free. So ask and discuss.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. So yeah, I see on your next slide you highlighted the Notary Public in and for the province, state, country of. So technically you can fill out this translation even if you live outside Canada. But again, if the Notary Public puts a stamp that is in language other than English or French, then we're back to square one again.
Then it's again the same loop. If this is done in English-speaking country, let's say Dubai or Saskatchewan, Dubai or Singapore, then it's removing one of these barriers. It will be in English already. If it's done in Russia, Ukraine, China, Japan, all the other 200 different countries, you're back to square one. You'll have your document not fully translated, which might cause questions from immigration authorities. You don't want to risk that.
Yeah. All right. So requirements from Passport Canada. So this is another section of the presentation.
Yep. So Passport Canada is what happens after you already immigrate to Canada, after you lived a few years here in Canada, became a Canadian citizen. Then if you apply for a Canadian passport, a travel document, they sometimes also require translation of your documents. Same thing, birth certificates, marriage certificates, court decisions, especially if you're applying for the passports for the kids, divorce agreements, stuff like that. The requirements are very simple. Again, English or French you need to provide, but it's more detailed, even more detailed than IRCC. They provide you three options. Yes, on this slide, they provide you three options of people that you can use to get your translations done. Certified professionals, which are those ATIO, OTIAC, etc. Non-certified professionals who are just working in a translation agency, or third party, all other people. The important detail here is that they need the translator to fill a specific form only used for Passport Canada. This form, it's called Declaration for Translators, PPTC 659E. You can download from the website. The translator has to know that they have to download this form and fill in. It's very particular. You mention all the details about the translator, their name, phone, home address, email address, all the details. Without this form, translators will not be acceptable. I have a few clients who didn't mention that the translations are for passport. We didn't fill this form because we didn't know, and they came back a few weeks later. Sometimes the clients come back, sometimes the passport office calls directly and says, okay, we have these documents for this client. We need you to sign the declaration and fax it or email it. Usually they want to fax it, which is an additional problem because I don't have a fax in my office. I have fax nowadays. But they want it faxed, so you have to drive to UPS store or something and get it faxed, which is another funny thing.
So this brings me to another point. Whenever you reach out to a translator, it's in your best interest to specify exactly what you need the translation for, whether that's for a PNP in Alberta or for Ontario or Saskatchewan or Passport Canada. Without those details, yes, you may get a translation that would typically be right and acceptable, but it may just not reach a certain threshold required by the demanding organization.
Absolutely. That's absolutely right.
Okay. So yeah, I see this statutory declaration is required for translators, non-certified professional translators. And then for third-party translators, they also have a notarized statutory declaration.
Yes. For third party, they also say that certain documents are not accepted by third party translators, court documents and legally binding agreements. So more important documents have to be done by properly certified translators. Again, reach out to translator that you want to use, reach out to me, to my agency, mention for sure where the documents are going to. As you can see from all the previous slides, every authority has their own requirements. They are all different. You need to really look into details and these small wordings to make sure that you don't miss anything. You only have one chance. Submit everything and then wait and hope that it gets accepted. If it doesn't, sometimes they respond back and give you 1 week to fix it. Sometimes they just decline and that's it. So better, reach out and say where it's going to, and we will make sure that we follow all the right processes and certification and stamps and everything.
All right. Okay, and then this is probably my favorite part of the whole presentation, because we'll be looking at some case studies. Okay, so Igor, maybe you can talk a little bit more about the documents that you have in here.
It's just some funny examples of what I had in my experience. This is my driver license from Russia. When I came to Canada, I went to get a driver license here in Ontario, and they said, no, you need to get this translated. I'm like, what do you want to get translated? Last name, first name, date of birth. There is nothing.
I guess it's just the title in here.
Just the title, because whoever doesn't read Russian, they don't know what this card is. It could be, a library card or swimming pool card. You don't know if you don't know Russian. So just the title, just the two words driver license on the top there, I had to go to translator, get it translated, and then come back to the office and apply for driver license. So it's funny, but in reality is if you don't know the language, you don't know what it says. So you get it translated, even if it's just 2 words. Sometimes you have to get 2 words translated.
Right. Okay.
Same thing with the next slide. I wanted to mention the diplomas, which are bilingual, and also answering the question from Paulina in the chat. If the documents are duplicated English and Russian, I would still get them translated because you don't know who was making this translation. Often, the translation made by educational authorities are not exactly perfect and not complete. So in this case, two stamps are clearly in Russian only. So better get it translated.
Okay. Let me move on to the next slide.
This is one more example of interesting case. When you apply for Canadian citizenship, the IRCC, the Immigration Authority, want to make sure that you have been in Canada certain amount of days, 1,095 something days in Canada. So they ask you to submit scans or photos of your travel passports showing like this stamps about crossing the border, going outside of Canada and moving back into Canada. And if you go to Cuba, Jamaica, Mexico, any Spanish speaking countries, you'll see all those stamps in Spanish. So all those stamps have to be again translated, even if it's just the name of the month and it looks easy for you to understand. Do not risk your chance. Get it translated by get it translated by a professional translation bureau or translator, and then submit this to IRCC. I deal with this every day. We have passports with stamps from many countries: China, Macau, Japan, Korea, all in different languages. So we have different translators who speak all those languages, who translate all the different stamps, and we prepare one final package for the client so they can submit everything back to the IRCC.
It's interesting, Igor, because we never have our clients go and translate the stamps in the passports. I have to be honest, we never do. But now you got me thinking. Right, it might be something that we have to be really cautious about. And
I've seen letters from IRCC asking for this specifically.
really,
Like the clients come and say, "Okay, I received this letter. I already sent, like you're saying, I already sent my passports without translation. Now they give me 1 week to submit the translations. Please help."
wow,
Yeah.
that is crazy. Yeah, it's very good that you actually put this slide in here because it got me thinking. Just to be on the safe side, it just pays off to translate it up front. But then, from a practical standpoint, how would you arrange translations done by different translators all in the same package? Let's say you have one stamp in Arab language, the other one in Spanish, and then one in French. How would you typically approach this?
So French is okay. English or French, you don't need to get translated.
Yeah, right.
Anything except for English and French, if it goes to different translators, have to be different files. If your passport has one stamp in Arabic, one stamp in Chinese, one stamp in Spanish, it will be 3 different translators working on your translations. It will be 3 different files. You can combine them in PDF.
Yeah, I can only imagine the nightmare if, let's say, you apply through Saskatchewan and you need a certified declaration, a statutory declaration by the translator, and you have one passport with 5 different translations and 5 different statutory declarations. So this file can get huge.
Sometimes it does. Nothing you can do. Well, IRCC has requirements on the file size. They want it to be 3 megabytes or something. I
4
forgot.
megabytes.
Yeah, 4 megabytes. You squeeze it. There are special websites which squeeze the PDF to certain size. You lose the quality, but you still have to upload it no matter.
Yeah, and speaking about the squeezing, the reducing the file size. So the GC key, which is the IRCC secure account, has a 4 megabytes limit, but then the PR portal has 2 megabytes limit. And sometimes it's even more challenging to fit the translation, especially, let's say, if you have a bank statement and you translate your proof of funds, which is for example, a statement from your bank and then accompanied with your uh, bank statements that maybe have like 5 or 10 pages with just a table and numbers, nothing in the page other than the numbers. And you would need to have the translation of the whole thing. And then somehow you would need to squeeze that in under 2 megabytes. And we'll talk about other things like practical aspects later on before we dive into the live Q&A session. So I don't want to stop you from presenting. Maybe we can proceed to the next slide, but there's so many thoughts that now that I have after the discussion. Yeah, you got me really curious.
On the spellings, so every country has their own way of spelling last names and first name and transliterating them into English. Let's say Russia, Ukraine, as examples. Each has different rules which changed over years. So as example, I put my own kids' travel passports. In my first passport, I was written as Isaev with double S, because at that time Russia was following the French transliteration rules, so we had to double S. And my dad has Isayev, so all different spellings. Right now, my passport say Isaev, 5 letters, so it's different. So what do you do if your documents have different spellings? Which document you follow? What spelling do you include? What I usually advise all my clients is to follow whatever the main document you are using to apply for immigration. Your current travel document or your current passport, whatever spelling is there, use that. Especially it's hard for the clients who are from Crimea, for example, from Ukraine, because they have some documents in Ukrainian, some documents in Russian, a mixture of different languages and a mixture of different translations, spelling of their last name and first name and patronymics. I ask the client to provide me whatever it's spelled in the current passport, and as much as possible, I try to follow what's in the current document, just to avoid any confusion, any questions from the officers. Is it the same person? Did they change the name? Why is it different? Keep one consistent spelling throughout.
Right.
You
And
can see
Igor,
more as well.
I had a client who applied for Ukrainian family reunification policy, and I think he used your services, if I'm not mistaken. It's actually a good friend of mine. Well, he is a Ukrainian national. He was, I think he was born in Ukraine. Actually, no, he was born in Bulgaria, but he's a citizen of Ukraine only. So somehow he doesn't have Bulgarian citizenship. He didn't have an original of his birth certificate, and he only had his Ukrainian passport, with which actually written, like, it had his name written in one way, but then when he came back to Bulgaria to request the birth certificate, they issued a birth certificate for his name spelled completely different. So how would you approach translating this document? Would you retain the same name, translating the certificate from Romanian, and then typing his last name, let's say, the way it's spelled in the passport? Because both documents use not Cyrillic, but Latin words, Latin letters. So what's the typical approach to this?
I'll show you in 2 slides.
Okay, perfect. Let's proceed.
The solution for this. This is one more example of issues with spelling that I have from clients who are from Lithuania, or who've been in Lithuania. Same thing happens in Israel as well. So in Lithuania, they add S in the end. So Ivan Borisenok, obviously a Russian person, became Ivan's Borisenok's S in the end, and his wife Yelena Borisenok as well. became Yelena Boriseno because you have to add a to make it a feminine. So all sort of problems with different spellings. That's okay. Whatever spellings are in the original documents, it's okay. On the next slide, I'll show you how I deal with such situations if there are different options available. So this person, Svetov Ivan, can I pronounce it correctly? Svetov Ivan. Ukrainian birth certificate, but he is written. The names are written in Russian language, so he had documents in Russian and in Ukrainian with different spellings, which he was submitting. What I did, I indicated Tsvetov Ivan as the main translation, whatever's in his passport right now, and then I added a translator's note, alternative spelling of the same name. This is the alternative spelling. This is sort of to give an idea to the immigration authorities, to the immigration officer, that this different spelling of the last name or different spelling of the first name of whatever actually is the same name, just spelled differently. It's the same person. So I checked and it's the same, just written differently. Again, to avoid any confusion. Same thing with the city name, if it's written in different ways, cities, regions, villages, all sort of things like this. Even universities change names. I provide translator's note, alternative spelling. That's usually good enough for immigration authorities to understand that it's the same person.
Yeah, and it's interesting because let's say in the export entry application, they ask if you had used any other name or nickname. We typically would answer yes if you have documents issued in two different languages, or one document would write your name in one spelling and then the other one would have a different spelling of your name. You would typically answer yes, and then you provide a letter of explanation for the proof of change of name, and this would be a good supporting document to show that yes, look, in one document my name is spelled one way, in the other it's spelled the other way. I didn't change my name, but I just want to be upfront and transparent to show that yes, sometimes you may see my name spelled differently in different documents. It doesn't mean that those documents are issued to different people.
Yeah. It's a good idea to indicate some sort of a letter of explanation that you have different spellings for your last name or first name in different languages. A good idea.
Yeah.
In my case, it's simple. It's just one spelling, Igor. How else can you spell it? It's simple. Of course, if you're from Ukraine, you can spell it Ihor, Ihor. So those people who are from Ukraine, they usually put both in some way. Yeah.
It's a funny story, Igor. You will relate to it probably. So back in 2010, I was an exchange student. So I went on a flex exchange program. I spent 1 year in the United States living in an American family. And so at that time, I think I was 16 years old. So I just got my first travel document issued specifically for kids. It had like a light blue color cover page, and my name was spelled Ihor with Ihor. So my host family, when I got to Iowa and they picked me up from the airport, they were so confused as to how to properly pronounce my name. And they're like, "How do you pronounce the name?" And I'm like, "It's Igor." And they're like, "Oh, thanks God, because we thought you would pronounce it differently." And so their assumption was that name Ihor with an H would be pronounced more like Eeyore. And for those people who live in English-speaking countries and watched Winnie the Pooh, Eeyore is the name of the donkey. And so they were like really happy that I don't pronounce my name as Eeyore. And from now on, they always refer to me with G, not an H in my first name. And so I'm like, once I finished my year in the United States, I came back to Ukraine. I changed all the documents to feature the G letter, not an H. So if you're a Ukrainian national spelling your first name through H, you may reconsider your decision.
That's funny. Yeah, it's a true story, right?
Yeah,
True story.
exactly.
Yeah. Was it hard to get the documents changed from H to G in Ukraine?
No, because I was so young, I didn't have many documents issued in English language, and I think it was just my travel document for the child, like the children's
Yeah,
travel
yeah.
document. And then once I got my adult passport, I just preferred to use the G, and then used G from ever since. I think the most complicated thing was to change the email address and then resubscribe to all the media and services that I had.
Yeah.
But now I'm thinking, what media services I could have at 16 years of age. But regardless,
It's
oh,
funny because the same thing happens with Belarus. Belarusian people, there is Russian and Belarusian, which are two different languages, which again follow two different transliteration rules. So people from Belarus, they can also have the same thing, where the name is spelled different ways if you transliterate from Russian to English or from Belarusian to English. I've
yeah.
seen such cases as well.
All right. So let's proceed to another interesting slide, which is common issues with translations.
Yes. So the common issue that I've seen, there is no certification of the translation, or it's wrong and not acceptable. It's hard to understand for the person who is looking at this without experience in this industry. So for clients, sometimes it's really hard to understand. So if you're watching this live and you're not sure about your translations, send them over. I will have a look. I will, free of charge, tell you if they're acceptable for this immigration program or not. If not, we'll provide you a quote for redoing. If they are, you're good to go. Sometimes translation are missing. So I've seen clients who are submitting their documents and then realizing, oh, okay, I forgot to get it translated at all. And there is usually a very short lead time which the authorities give you to provide the translations. Usually like 1 week, 2 weeks at most. So if you realize that you forgot to submit translations, maybe do them now, keep them handy in some folder on your computer just in case you are asked. You will upload them and done. You will not need to rush and search for people and compare quotes, call somebody and get it organized. Get it done
And
today.
Igor, maybe I can also add here, if you submitted your application and you realize like, oh my God, I forgot the translation, send a web form immediately, immediately,
Attach.
because the officer is under no obligation to actually review your web form. They are bound to review only what's submitted with the application when it was submitted on day one. So, but sending the web form proactively might give you, I don't know, just a chance to for redemption.
Absolutely. A chance is better than nothing. So if you
Exactly.
notice that you missed something, send through the web form. It's better than doing nothing. Sometimes paper versions are required. Not always, but sometimes are. IRCC is moving more and more towards online applications. Less and less you can submit everything by paper. When I was applying for immigration 10 years ago or so, I used to send everything by paper. Nothing was available online, but it was 10 years ago, so now it's changed. Still, I provide my clients with paper versions. Whoever wants them, not everybody, of course, but whoever wants them, I provide paper versions, and I usually provide two copies. So same translations, just two identical copies, because sometimes they submit one to provincial program, and then the second one they keep for whenever the federal stage comes. They'll have them handy. They don't need to worry. So I usually provide two copies in case you're applying provincial federal, or in case you spill your tea on one and then you have the second one intact.
Mm-hmm.
So I usually provide two copies. um, More about issues: stamps not translated. We've talked about this earlier, but stamps have to be translated. Everything that is not English or French, every word, every stamp, every handwriting has to be translated so that people can understand what it says. And spellings can also cause problems if you have different ways to spell your last or first name. Mention them to whoever you're ordering translations from. Mention them to me. Send it, by email. all the versions, how you can spell your last name and first name and everything. I will include them all into my translation notes so that, less confusion, less questions from the immigration authorities, higher chances of you successfully moving through the immigration journey and, getting your passport.
Yeah. And Igor, maybe I can also add one other common problem that I see a lot in our practice. We often have clients who come to us and they say, okay, so here's the scan of my original document, and I've got a translation. And the translation is all fine. But we still say, you know what, this translation will not be accepted, regardless that it was done by, I don't know, certified translator with all the stamps and affidavits. Because there is a requirement that you have to provide a scan of the original document and then a translation that consists of at least two things, right? So the translation itself with the stamp of the translator and the stamped original scan of the original document. So typically, this would lead you to a situation where you have the original without a stamp, and then the copy of the original with the translator stamp, and then the translation. So instead of just 2 pages, 2 components, you need at least 3, right? And so this is especially a problem if, again, you're translating a long, let's say, bank document, bank statement. You have to have the bank statement, which is itself 5 pages long. Then you have to have the copy of the bank statement with 5 stamps from the translator. And then you need to have the translation done by the translator. So 5 pages can quickly turn into 15 pages. And so many clients just don't get this concept that you have to have the same document, just 2 copies, one with stamp, one without the stamp.
Yes. Well, in our translation packages, we always include scans or photos of whatever documents the client gave us, stamped, obviously, so that there is no confusion on what we had to work from. So it's very clear. And yes, it becomes a lengthy document. And yes, you have to fit in those requirements for megabytes, how many megabytes you have. A lot of clients ask us to compress the file 4 megabytes, 3 megabytes, 2 megabytes, and we do that. Sometimes we combine the text a bit to make it less pages. Sometimes we reduce the resolution of the image. Sometimes we use those online websites which just squeeze the size of PDF and reduce the quality. All the different approaches, if there is a certain size to fit, you have to fit. Right. Clients email us and tell us what size they want, and we work to make it happen.
Right. All right. So I think, Igor, we got to a stage where we can proceed to the live Q&A. But before we do that, just wanted to remind everyone that you can always reach out to Igor to have your translations arranged. As it was mentioned before, Igor doesn't only work with Ukrainian and Russian language translating into English or French. Thanks to the Translation Agency of Canada, Igor can arrange the translations from over 200 languages. That's what you said?
We say from any language, yes.
Okay. Yeah. So here you have it. And then if you mention the keyword Holthe, so when you reach out to Igor through email or through any other method, you just mention Holthe and you're going to get a 10% off. We don't take a cut of it. It's just Igor's kind gesture to all clients that come from our firm and from this live video. So yeah, highly recommend that you reach out to Igor and get your translations done right the first time without taking a risk. Okay?
Absolutely. This discount is valid forever.
Okay, perfect. So this brings us to the live Q&A session. And I know many people. I think we have about 300 people watching live, which is absolutely crazy, unexpected. We have many questions. So if you have any questions that you want to ask, feel free to dump them in the chat, and then we'll pull them up. So Igor, I don't know if you want...
Isabella already.
Yeah. We have too many questions from Isabella. So is there any specific question that you want to pull up first, or we just go in random?
The most.
Okay. So yeah, Isabella is asking about stamps. So I'm just going to pull it up again. So is there a standard format by IRCC on how stamps should be translated?
There is no particular template that you have to follow. You just have to translate everything that is not English or French. If the stamp has certain things written in a different language, just have to get it translated.
Okay.
So that's it. No particular template.
All right. So we do have some questions about Express Entry or Upload Opportunity Stream, and we'll not be answering those. Sorry, I'll have to close this comment. We won't be answering those questions because we just want to limit the topic to translations only. But we do have a question from Alexandra Ipadova, and she asks, if translations are made for the provincial program, will they be suitable for the second level, for the second stage, the federal stage in IRCC? And can I ask the translator for a second copy of the translations?
From my experience, requirements from the provincial program are always the same or stricter than IRCC. So if you're applying for provincial program, you get the translations, they will be acceptable for IRCC, not the other way around. So if you're applying first to provincial program, mention which province, and mention to me which province or which program you are applying, and I'll research the requirements. There is more than 200 different immigration programs in Canada from all different provinces. Even cities have immigration programs. So there's a lot to research and digest. Mention the name of the program, or if you don't know the name, at least which province, and then I'll Google and research the requirements, and they will be acceptable for IRCC.
Okay.
For the second copy, if you mean, Alexander, the paper copies of the translations, the actual physical papers, can I ask? You can always ask. Some translators charge money for printing and shipping. Some translators ask $40 per document to get it printed. I don't charge anything. I print 2 copies of every translation, send you 2 copies. You can submit one for provincial and keep the second one for federal, or just keep them with you in case you need it, further for education or for opening up a business for any other immigration matters in Canada. So I provide 2 copies free of charge.
Okay. And then the next question is from our rock star, Isabella. So Isabella is asking, is it required for PR application? And I think this comment came when we were talking about passport. I thought we only need biographical data page.
The stamps are only required at the stage where you're submitting for citizenship, not at the PR application. When you're applying for PR, nobody cares which countries, how many days you've spent. After you become a PR, you need to spend 1,095 something days inside Canada. That's why they are asking for those stamps. They want you to they want to count how many days you've been in Canada. If you've been 1,094 days, you can't apply. They'll reject your application. That's it. And the days of entry and the days of exit are also counted as being inside Canada. So those stamps are really important, how many days you are inside Canada. That's only when you apply for citizenship after you've been a PR for 5 years now. How many? I think 5 years.
And Isabella, maybe I can add here, like when we prepare permanent residence applications, we always provide the biographical page of the passport and then the pages with the stamps, even if they may not be specifically required, we just do. And then it's up to the officer whether they want to consider those stamps or they just don't need those. We always tend to provide more than what is asked, just to be on the safe side. Okay. And then we have a feedback from Alexandra. She says, well, thank you. I will definitely order from you. This is exactly what we want to hear after the end of this live Q&A. Now, I think there was another question that I actually really want to pull up. And this one is again from Isabella. For faulty translations, is it the accuracy in the translation or simple mistakes like typo? So what do you mean this is a faulty translation? What if, for example, if you submitted a bank statement for translation and then, I don't know, let's say column 2 row 5, you have one digit, and then the translator puts a different digit. Would this make the translation faulty? Will IRCC refuse application because of that? Who's responsible for that?
Very good questions. Translators, some translations can have mistakes like this. What I do, I always send the electronic version of translations whenever they are ready to the client to have a look. It's good to have a second pair of eyes just to have a look at the numbers. I'm not requesting them to proofread and make corrections, though they can obviously do that. And if they return with any comments, I make sure to address them. But I always send for checking. We are all people. We all make mistakes. Sometimes I can skip a number or just working late in the evening. Sometimes something can go wrong. It's good to have a second pair of eyes to double check the translation. So I send to clients. Some clients check and return back with some suggestions. Sometimes it's just like spelling. Okay, my spelling is not this. Can you fix it to this? Or can you add a note about my last name, first name? Sometimes it's more elaborate. Depends on the client. Yeah, I would suggest that each client checks their translations and their documents and their applications, everything carefully, because this is basically your application. You're submitting your application, your life depends on it. So, better check if everything is okay. If the translation gets rejected because it was done poorly, if this is my translation, I will fully refund the client. I have put on my website, on both websites, if the translations are rejected by the authorities, I will fully refund my clients whatever they paid. This has never happened. This actually has never happened yet. If it does happen, I will refund and think what I can improve in my practice. This has never yet happened.
Yeah, and yeah, you're right. We all make mistakes. Even the immigration officers, as ironic as it may sound, may make mistakes. Yeah. And speaking about mistakes made by the officers, it's important to note that if, let's say, you have someone who had their application approved with a faulty translation, with a translation that should not have been accepted, it doesn't mean that that's the new rule and your translation will get the same treatment. Yeah. Whatever works for one person may not work for you. And if one officer missed the translation that should have not been accepted, the other officer may catch your translation and say, you know what, we're going to refuse your application. And good luck trying to explain to that officer that your application should be approved because your friend had their application approved as well.
Yeah, it will not work like this.
Yeah, okay. And so we have another question from Anj. So Anj is saying, hi, for the visitor visa application, do we need translated documents of property documents, or is it acceptable by IRCC if just sharing the summarized report of property evaluation in English and original in
local language?
Local language, yeah. So yeah, quick answer. Every document that you want to provide with your application, if it's not in English or French, needs to be translated. And it's up to you and not your translator to decide what documents you need. If you have a representative, such as an immigration lawyer or consultant, who assists you with determining how to better present your evidence, then they will advise you, okay, we better include this document or we can omit it. So yeah, reach out for help if you need assistance preparing your application. But if you include something, you better get ready. You better make sure that it is properly translated.
Yep.
So Diana asks a very similar questions. Do we have to translate payslips? Same answer. If you choose to include those, yes, they may be helpful, and we often do, regardless whether we apply for permanent residence, for example, to prove your Canadian work experience. They specifically ask that you provide your pay stubs and your T4s. If it's a foreign work experience, they typically ask you just for reference letters, but we go an extra mile. We always provide reference letters, business cards, pay stubs, tax documents if those are available, just to ensure that the officer does not have any questions that might put your application at risk. We always preemptively provide more than what they ask for.
Absolutely. It's a good idea to provide more documentation to support your case. And obviously, if it's not in English or French, you'll have to get it translated.
Yeah. So yeah, Diana, I think I've also answered your second question right here. Even if it's not required, why not provide it? And then Ange is saying, thank you for your response. And I think this is a good segue into finishing this this live stream. I really appreciate, Igor, all your time and efforts, and I know how hard it is to prepare the presentation and think strategically about all the potential questions that may be interesting to our viewers. I think we had about 321 people. I'm not sure if that ticker is actually right, but I hope it is. I hope it is. I hope this video was helpful to many people. I think there is a comment saying that I missed. Oh yes, I did miss the question from El Hussein. Okay, El Hussein, your question will be the last one. So do all IRCC agents understand English and French? If no, someone provides documents in French and English. Will this result in a delay? So are the officers really bilingual? And what happens if some documents are in English, some documents are in French? Do you have any insight?
Well, the official requirement is English or French, both are acceptable. I'm 100% sure not everybody speaks both English and French, but they do have employees who speak English and they do have employees who speak French. So depending on which language you submit your documents in, and they'll go to one officer or the other. Mm-hmm. Same thing with any other governmental institution. If you go to Passport Canada, driver's test, anything, any governmental institution, if you want to speak French, they'll have a French employee. If you want to speak English, they'll have an English-speaking employee. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah. It's their internal processes, how they distribute the workload and assign different tasks to different officers. Typically, when you apply for a federal federal position somewhere at the federal agency, they would require that you know at least some basic French or English, regardless of whatever language is your first language.
Yep.
All right, perfect. So thank you again. Thank you so much. It was a very helpful presentation. For those people who tuned in, please make sure you hit the subscribe button and that you also like this video, leave a comment, share it with your friends. And then just before we disconnect, one thing that I wanted to add here is I'll just try to do it rough and tumble in here. 1 second. I'm just going to add it on the stream. So if you need help with your translations, this is the place where you want to go. So you will get in touch with Igor directly, and then he will answer all of your questions relating to translations. So, yeah.
Don't forget to mention the code word Holthe, which will give you 10% discount.
Yeah, and I'll probably just pull up the slide again in here, if I can. No, I can't. Regardless, okay. I think we'll just end it here then. So, yeah. Thank you again, and have a good day, everyone.